Hey folks, this is Bailey from Dank Wargaming.
Hey, this is Heath with Table War Hawaii.
And welcome to the Path to Redemption, the Warhammer 40,000 Dark Angels podcast, where we provide Dark Angels players with the tactical and hobby advice and skills that they need in order to compete and enjoy this wonderful hobby of ours. Today, this is our May episode. We're going to be looking at a few new merchandise releases that have come out, as well as a pre-order that should catch a few of our attentions because we've been waiting for it for several months. We're going to take a look at a few pole position finishes for some meta lists in the Meta Watch section. Then for our main feature today, we're going to talk about the books that we read for our monthly challenge from last month. So we're going to look a little bit into the lore, and then we'll have our new monthly challenge, a little fan interaction, and then we will be done. Ready to go, Heath?
Let's do it.
All right, so if you listened to The Long War this last week, Kenny Boucher, the guy behind Next Level Painting, mentioned that he finally did a Dark Angels design. You know, by popular demand, he finally did it. So if you go to Next Level Painting and you go look up the Unforgiven Angels chapter, the Unforgiven chapter, we've got T-shirts for $25, hoodies for $35, bigger size T-shirts for $30, a phone case, a bag, stickers. They got everything. So if you want
just all that swag.
Yeah, so if you want some dark...
Just usual variety of swag.
Yep, so if you want some some unofficial 40K swag that's Dark Angels, it's cool. It's like a cloaked, really in shadow. It's primarily green, but it's mostly, with a lot of black. It's a really neat design, Cypher-like in a way, so if you're big into Cypher, I'd suggest that. The other sort of swag is some official swag. I don't know how many of these you're going to sell, because it's kind of out of my price range, so I don't know how much it's in everybody else's price range, but then again, it's Warhammer. But for $115, you can get the official black leather Imperium jacket with the huge Aquila on the back. Did you see that?
I don't know about that.
By Merchoid?
I did. So, I don't know. The Aquila, like the huge Aquila, like it's probably gonna... I mean, it's cool, but it's like... I don't know. Like walking around the huge like Imperial Eagle, it may... Yeah, I don't know. It may elicit some questions that you might not be willing to answer. Some people could assume some things about it. It looks a little... I don't know. So, but if you want to like frame it or something like a bomber jacket, I don't know. But it could be a cool piece of art. I don't know if you're ever going to get away with actually wearing it. But.
And the sad thing is the color on the Chaos one is so much cooler. Like, I saw the Chaos one and I was like, oh, yeah. And then I thought, I can't purchase that because everyone's like, well, isn't that a Dark Angels jacket anyway? And it's like, yeah. If it wasn't for us,
yes,
there wouldn't be any other legions if it wasn't for us because we're the first ones. So enough of that.
Yep.
And then finally, in new releases, they announced, because what is it today? It's the 16th of May. So this morning for me, around noon actually, they dropped the pre-orders on Warhammer Community for next weekend, so the 21st, and you can finally pre-order those heavy intercessors. So if you
heavy intercessors, they said like what was it like 2 months ago that when Pariah Nexus came out, the heavy intercessors are going to be coming quote in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
I mean.
And then they had that huge pushback because they couldn't get anything through. They're like, no releases, period. And it might be it's going to be a little bit overshadowed by the fact that, the Necron, half that box is coming out as well. Plus you have the Adeptus Mechanicus book dropping, plus a bunch of there's like some additional stuff for the Soul Blight Gravelords coming out too. So it's a massive packed weekend.
Yeah, a bunch of the new Age of Sigmar stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I think actually there's some made to order stuff from that Cursed City box, like the bad guys. You can get them made to order. So
I don't follow that too closely. So if you say so, that's good. A lot of the Cursed City stuff. I mean, it looks really cool. A bunch of the Age of Sigmar small box games never really got into it. So I'm holding on my hopes for Battlefleet Gothic. That's where my fandom is.
Yeah,
so
that would be pretty cool to play. All right, so that's the new releases to look forward to. So moving into Meta Watch, I pinged an article from Goonhammer, but I didn't really get a chance to read it. But it was just sort of good, and they do a lot of stats. So if you want like some like hard stats on competitive play, like people playing certain armies against certain armies, mirror matches, not mirror matches, as well as they do a lot of like secondary work, like which secondaries got picked based on some of the apps. So you can go take a look at that real quick if you're at home. That's their May 2021 40K meta review. So I really like Goonhammer for those kinds of things. But looking at lists, all right, May 24th there were a couple of tournaments in that weekend, and there were some placing Dark Angels lists that weekend. There were 2 third place. One was Kyle McCord at the Wooden Spoon GT, and he was actually running an Imperial Soup list that included some Dark Angels. So let's see, let me click on this here, take a look at it. Because, let's see, it had AdMech guys, it had Astra Militarum guys, and then it had Lazarus, some Blade Guard veterans, and a Redemptor. 2 Redemptors. And a Landspeeder.
Lazarus is an interesting choice. And I think we talked about this a few months ago. Says like, Lazarus, when you just look at him in a Dark Angels list, like what he does as like the 5th company captain, it's not that impressive. But when I think we said that, hey, if we get into an environment where there's a much larger mortal wound output threat, which the Dark Eldar can do, Lazarus starts to look more attractive because he gives you that just blanket bubble of 5 up, feel no pain against mortal wounds. So that combined with your Blade Guard veterans, and he is still a captain, and he's not bad at close combat. Yeah. So
just finish some more.
That's interesting. That's an interesting choice. Yeah, that's an interesting choice.
Yep, I liked that one. So he went 4-1, got 3rd place. Then you have Dylan Grant at the Olympus Games GT. He also got 3rd place, also with a 4-1 score. And let's see what he had. He had the Outrider Detachment with the Apothecary, Captain on Bike, the Attack Bike Squad with the Multi-Meltas, Bike Squad with 2 Melta guns in it, and a Combi Melta. Yikes. Oh, man.
Lots of Meltas. Lots of Meltas.
Wait, does he have 2 Outriders? He has 2 Outrider Detachments. That is really cool. Oh, but the second one is not... Oh, no, never mind. It was a Vanguard. It was the break in the page is funny. So it was a Vanguard, and then he has Big E, Interrogator Chaplain. Oh, and it's the Slaplin, because he's got the Chainsword, Teeth of Terra, Paragon of the Chapter, the Jump Pack. So it's that Chaplain. And then...
Yep, that little guy.
Then a big Deathwing Terminator squad with the Storm Shields, Thunderhammers, and Lightning Claws. And then a smaller squad with Storm Bolters and Power Fists. But there's a guy in there with Lightning Claws. I just think Lightning Claws, they just add so much flexibility to your Terminator squad, because I found when you run guys with just the Power Fists or the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield, they get swarmed by anything. Boys, big blob of witches, gaunts. Then all of a sudden they're just like useless.
Yeah, it's super efficient because you're hitting on 3s, and then you can if they charge you, all of a sudden you're hitting on 2s because you're Dark Angel, and if you got a captain nearby, you're rerolling the 1s, and then those Lightning Claws. Each individual Lightning Claw gives you +1 attack. Yeah. So a pair of Lightning Claws is +2 attacks. So a Terminator with a pair of Lightning Claws, you charge him, he gets 5 attacks. That's going to hit on 2s because he didn't move, and reroll wounds. And it's a real tough proposition for a lot of people to look at. So so that's a fairly kind of what we've seen the Dark Angels kind of coalesce into is this these big, really hard to kill bricks of Deathwing Terminators and a lot of mobility from the Ravenwing. But as we talked about last month, the Dark Eldar, which are the new hotness in the scene, are ideally suited to kill Space Marines, especially Terminators, because they just overwhelm you with attacks. So we're gonna have to, and we're gonna have to, see how the meta is shifting. Because once again, right now everyone is kitted up to deal with Terminators and Space Marines, especially Dark Angel ones, and that type of loadout does not do you a lot of good when you're looking at ravening hordes of witches. So I think that once everyone kind of figures out what that's going on, then we should see the Dark Eldar win rate start to come down a little bit. I mean, I hope, because right now it's not. They got a lot going for them. It's not super balanced. So, but as we start to kind of figure out what the tactics and the techniques are, and everyone starts teching for Drakari instead of the Space Marines, then maybe things will start to balance out a little bit more. Well,
and to sort of illustrate that point, right, the Dallas Open also happened that weekend, and that was really hyped as an event because it was the biggest event since COVID in the United States, where there were several hundred people playing.
Yeah.
And the top 5 of that tournament were all Drakari players of some nature, although I think Sean Naden was running Eldari suit because Sean Naden.
Because Sean Naden, yeah.
But that's, that was it. And then you don't find a Dark Angels player until you go back to 29th place. And when I looked, I don't remember seeing anybody else in like the top 50. And this guy went 5-3. His name was Sam Smith. I believe you have.
Yeah, I got his list right here. So he ran 2 detachments. So first detachment's an Outrider. The HQ is a Talon Master with the Rights of War and Arbiter's Gaze, which we've all seen that one. That's a real good combination. 3 squads of 3 attack bikes with multi-meltas. And then a bike squad. The Sergeant has a combi plas, and 2 of the bikers have special weapons that are plasma guns. So it's 3 bikes all with plasma. And then another bike squad. The Sergeant has a Stormbolter, and 2 bikers have chainswords. And then another bike squad, Stormbolter on the Sergeant, and the 2 bikers have chainswords.
Okay.
So that's his first Outrider detachment. So lots of bikes, lots of OBSEC bikes, plasma, and those 2 chainsword bike squads are for kind of close combat, just melee skirmishing. We all know what those multi-melted attack bike squads do. So the Vanguard Detachment is the second detachment. So this one is interesting because he has a captain on a bike, which is a Ravenwing guy, but it's a captain, so can also be given the Inner Circle keyword. And he has Teeth of Terra, so it's not like the Slaplin, but yeah, that's still a pretty good close combat punch that can move things around and get that real one's aura into a lot of places. Two company veterans, so just 1 squad of 2 company veterans. That's 40 points. They both have chainswords, so that's kind of just your objective sitters. A Deathwing command squad with a Watcher in the Dark, so 2 Deathwing Terminators. One of them has a Thunderhammer and a Storm Shield, and the Sergeant has a Stormbolter and a Power Sword. So that's 2 Deathwing Terminators to sit on an objective, and then a Deathwing Terminator squad, again with a Watcher in the Dark. So you've got 2 Thunderhammer Storm Shields, and then the rest are Power Fist Stormbolters. And then you've got a Ravenwing Apothecary with a Black Knight bike, and he's the Chief Apothecary Selfless Healer. We all know what that does. So then here's the interesting part. The last unit is an Inceptor Squad.
Ooh.
So 5 Inceptors.
Oh, yes.
So this actually breaks the Deathwing Vanguard Detachment, so he doesn't get OBSEC on those Deathwing Terminators. But I guess that's okay. That's fine. Yeah. So it's an interesting choice because, one, you're basically, you can still form the Vanguard Detachment that way, but the only thing you're giving up is because you don't have all of the units with either the Inner Circle or the Deathwing keyword, because the Inceptor Squad doesn't have either of those, you're giving up the OBSEC that you would get on the Terminators. But, the Command Squad doesn't actually get the OBSEC. It's just that one 5-man squad Deathwing Terminators. So, not a huge deal. This is just a lean choice. Or he's trying to, he wants that, that big brick hammer of overcharged plasma with weapons of the Dark Age. And you put it in here, and you're good to go, right? So all the stuff is going to kind of sit in the backfield or be a big brick and you put in the middle of the board that is going to be hard to shift. And that 5-man Inceptor Squad that you keep in reserve that can drop in and do plasma and put plasma places that you need plasma. I really like this unit. I've used it myself a lot over the last couple editions, especially because he's got a captain on a bike. And that captain on the bike has the Ravenwing keyword, so you can full throttle that guy to get his aura anywhere you need it to be. And so if you can drop these Inceptors in within range of that guy's aura, so they're going to be real on ones to hit, and then you can overcharge their plasma. And that is 10 D3 plasma shots
Oh, yeah.
Each one of those D3s has blast, so it'll clear hordes. It will clear, if you split it up right, you could do a pretty good number on clearing some vehicles. So a bunch of those. I haven't sat down and run the math now that I'm thinking about it on how many Drakari Raiders I could blow up with one of these things. But I'd probably say if you point one of them at each one, you're probably not going to kill it. So you could probably kill 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky, if you overcharge and go Weapons of the Dark Age. So each one of those plasma hits does 3 damage.
And you want to make sure that you have that captain over there too, because mathematically, at some point you're going to have to, especially if you roll max shots, you're going to mathematically roll a 1. So you need to have your captain over there to help.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so like, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that squad. You can, once again, 2 CP to kick their damage output up by another 30%, which is fantastic. You can also, if you really want to get it done, you can spend 2 CP to make them count as standing still when they drop in. So that way they get +1 to hit. So now they're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, with strength 8, AP 4 plasma.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be, And if you can drop them in next to that Talon Master as well, they're also going to be rerolling the 1s on that. So I could see some stuff there if you can get that captain on a bike. Depends on how your first turn is going to go and what you think you need to do. Or you could honestly, once again, depending on the terrain, depending on the deployment, there is an argument for deploying these things on the board because they do have a pretty decent threat range.
Yeah, they move.
So
really
they
fast.
can move. I think
like
10 inches for Inceptors.
They move 10.
10-inch move, plus your 18-inch range on those plasma guns. So, yeah.
And they're
interesting list.
Assault, right, so that when they come in, they're going to be
assault,
get the extra AP, and God forbid they get charged. True. You can stay in tactical and shoot them in close combat.
Yes, and because they don't have the Deathwing keyword, they will benefit from your it's not Grim Resolve. What is the name of your second death?
Lion?
The fire discipline. Yeah, Sons of the Lion, the fire discipline. You can shoot them in combat. Yeah, so interesting squad. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Inceptors. You could spend CP to make them take an action and shoot. Once again, this is gonna be a very CP intensive army because lots of actually now that I'm thinking about it, like, so I'm looking at this list. Okay, so I've got multi-meltas. He doesn't have a Chapter Master. He doesn't have Sam. He doesn't have Azrael. So if you want to re-roll hits against something, the only way he can do that is that Talon Master is a land speeder. You can spend 2 CP for his targeting guidance. So that lands, triggering off a Ravenwing land speeder, the entire army, regardless of core, will be able to re-roll hits against something that's within 18 inches. Right. The target that you designate. So that can be important. I don't know. Once again, 2 CP is steep, but if there's a big alpha unit, like, I don't know, someone brings a Stompa or something, or one of those,
or Imperial Knights for some reason, someone actually plays
or an Imperial Knight. Yeah, well, I don't know if this is going to work into an Imperial Knight, because I think you're going to need more than 18 multi shots to kill an Imperial Knight, but. It's also interesting that he chose to do plasma on one of the bike squads, and not more Melta or flamers. So whenever I run that type of squad, I usually run 3 flamers in it.
Oh yeah,
just because I think having a crowd control methodology that auto hits is good. But I don't know. So it's an interesting list. I can see why Drakari would be an issue for it though, because they're going to be able to overwhelm the Deathwing, and they're going to outspeed and be able to isolate all the Ravenwing units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will point out.
Anyway, interesting list.
I will point out that all 3 of these guys, they had like 90-point games in their games, and however their losses for the most part, they're in that 50s to 60 range. Although Sam and he had 2 80-point losses, so he must have had 2 really, really close games. So he was really close to
an 84 and an 80. Yeah, his last game was a 55. And I'd like to interested to see who that last matchup was against that he only scored 55 points. But
Yeah, and then one of the games he won,
I could probably figure out how to look at that.
In one game he lost, he scored 84. So like he actually won games with less points than what he lost by. So that tells me that game, those losses were really close.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and then finally,
all right. So yeah.
But finally, some good news.
Hey,
some good news. May 8th, Red River GT. We have an unbeaten 5-0 Dark Angels list that had 3 perfect games in terms of points. 300-point games.
Perfect games. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's spicy. That's spicy.
Got his closest game, he scored 68. That was his first game he won. And then he went 100, 100, 100, and then 93. Like, he just got better.
Wow. All right. Yeah, that's good.
So this list,
that's real good.
What we got in this one, and this is Thomas Ogden. He's rocking the Outrider Vanguard Detachment. So that just seems to be the thing. Everybody's got an Outrider and then a Vanguard. There's no Green Wing to be seen. No intercessors anywhere. So he's got the Talon Master with Arbiter's Gaze, the Chaplain or Primaris Chaplain on bike, Master of Sanctity, the Apothecary. Then he has the full, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 9 attack bikes with multi-meltas. And then he has a bike squad with an attack bike with a multi-melta in it, and then 2 land speeder vengeances. So he figured out, he remembered that like you can put an attack bike in the bike squad, so he's sneaking in extra ones.
Yep. I like that. I'm a fan of that. It was also because it gives you a bit more ablative wounds for the bikes. Because they have 4 wounds each, and then if you're apothecaries, they're gonna hey what's up? I got an attack bike back. So
yep. And then in the Vanguard he's got Azrael and then Ezekiel, and then he's running 3 command squads of Deathwing, where one has Lightning Claws and one has a Thunderhammer and Storm Shield. And this is the unit that I haven't really run, and because I'm still in that 8th edition mentality, like if you're going to run Terminators, you try and run the big blobs. But it looks like that is not the way, because some of these other guys, they were running these command squads. He went all command squads. So, and I think this is part of the piece trading that I keep hearing a lot of people on podcasts and things talk about, that you want to have pieces that you can go, all right, you can kill this 80-point squad of Terminators, but this 80 squad point of Terminators is going to kill more than 80 points of you. Because you have that Lightning Claw guy.
Yeah, they're going to trade up.
Attacks. Yeah. Then there's a guy with a Thunderhammer. So that squad could kill a tank. That squad could kill other heavy infantry. That squad can kill light infantry. It can kill just about anything at once, and it's only 80 points. It deep strikes. It sits on an objective. But they're still Deathwing Terminators, so you just can't ignore them. You just can't go over there with something small and like plink it, because it's not going to die, right? You just can't go, here's my las guns from my 1 squad of infantry. They're going to go over there and shoot them. It's like, yeah, well, I'm in cover and I have a Storm Shield, so I have a 1-up save against your... I don't care how many...
It'd be a 0-up save. 0-up save.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
So yeah, even your -1 bolters, I'm still getting a 2-up save on. Even your -2 whatever's, your So the concept of trade, did it get its points back? I think is a bit of a trap. It is definitely appropriate in a lot of places to, for a unit to not get its points back because points aren't the only resource you have to consider.
Right.
Once the game is in play, you can trade points for battlefield position or objectives. I will absolutely, sacrifice a unit and not get its points back if that means I score my primary that turn and you don't. So, but these 3 80-point guys, I see them because once again they're very small. It's two guys, and they don't have their command squads, so they don't have OBSEC. But I think that they're gonna sit on your objectives, or maybe even you put 2 of them on one objective, and it's enough that you can't really just throw some trash fire at them because they're Deathwing Terminators. You're gonna have to, and it's gonna take a concerted effort to shift that. So, because that's 6 wounds with a 0-up armor save and a 4-up invul save that has permanent transhuman. So once again, a couple squads of witches will take care of it for you, but it's gonna be something you have to think about. So,
well, and I'd also point out that there are no transports for any of the characters, and these guys' character screen. because they're bodyguards.
Yeah, they do the super lookout, sir. Yeah,
So,
interesting that this guy has those land speeder vengeances. That was the thing that you and I had kind of said. Well, maybe the 2d3 plasma shots isn't quite reliable enough, but he's got 2 of them. So, what do you think the objective, the idea behind that is?
if you like it, run 2. Like, if it's unreliable,
redundancy.
Run the second one, and it'll clean up whatever the first one doesn't kill. And I mean, it's fast. It's got more toughness, more wounds. The speeder, it's faster. You can do the stratagem off of them because they're a land speeder. You can provides the plasma in the list that otherwise only has plasma on Ezreal. So we're the one guy we're looking at Sam's list, and he had the Inceptors because it's like, well, you're Dark Angels, you just can't not have plasma. And so Thomas's answer was, well, I'll just put it on the back of a land speeder and zip it around. Plus, it has heavy bolter.
Yeah. Okay. What secondaries do you think this list takes?
Oh, it probably takes, like engage on all fronts. You could probably see it taking that pretty easily, or it's maybe one of those, like maybe if it depends.
Or I think Linebreaker could be a good one for this list
with all the bikes.
Yeah.
I could see it if you have these smaller Terminator squads at Deep Strike that have the small, they don't take up all that space. They have the small footprints. That's what I was looking for. Then you just drop them in a corner somewhere and go, all right, repair a teleport homer for me. And then it's like if you want to go stop me, you have to go kill 2 Deathwing Terminators. One of them has a Storm Shield. So it's that thing of like, do you really want to? I'm either going to get 4 points, or you're going to have to waste some resources killing 2 guys that you would rather go kill something else, such as these land speeder vengeances or the 60 million multi-melta shots that are coming at you every game or every turn.
Yeah, and that Arbiter's Gaze Talon Master.
Oh yeah.
See, I could see Death on the Wind being a thing that this list takes.
Yeah. Oh, hands down, takes it every game, almost just about every single game.
Yeah, it depends on what it depends on if you're playing OBSECs or like MSU style stuff. Death on the Wind would be a good list one for this take. Yeah, I've kind of gone away from engage on all fronts. I guess it just depends on the board.
It really spreads you out. It really does.
It does. And I like, if I get a Dawn of War style deployment, like what we used to call Dawn of War back in 8th edition, the standard, like, long edge to long edge, I think Linebreaker is actually kind of a better choice. So, but that's just me. Anyway, anything else to say about this list? I think it's good. It's very similar to the last one we talked about, except instead of those smaller bike squads, he's got these land speeders, which I would be really curious to ask him what he uses those for, other than just the obvious strategy or the stratagem playoffs. Yeah. So, interesting.
All right. Well.
Oh, another thing to observe here, just real quick.
Right.
So he's got Azrael as the warlord in his Vanguard detachment. So this thing starts up. He only basically he's only down 1 CP from his objectives, his detachment buys.
Yeah.
Vice the 3 that normally would be. So that's a good choice. And Ezekiel with what did he put on Ezekiel? Mindworm, Engulfing Fear, and Mind Wipe.
Yeah.
So Engulfing Fear to blow OBSEC, Mind Wipe to make you fight last. Yeah, I was just to see how he plays.
One
this
of those
list.
is the turns off the auras, isn't it? Between Mindworm or Mindworm.
Yeah, I think that's Mindworm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I'm noticing too here, because I do this all the time, is there isn't that third warlord trait, because he's got the one on Az, and then he's got the one on the apothecary, but he didn't try and push one onto the lieutenant or the chaplain. And then he has 2 relics, because he has the reliquary, the repentant, and then the arbiter's gaze. Because that's something that I always end up doing. I end up like pushing for that third warlord trait, and it's interesting to see that he didn't. So that, because I feel like I always feel like I don't have enough command points, and so I've just been kind of looking at what characters can I build where they're still strong, and I don't need to give them a warlord trait. And it looks like that chaplain doesn't.
This is definitely it's definitely an efficiency play, and I agree. Like, when I tend to say, okay, well, how can I make this dude as killy as possible? And you end up with, hero of the chapter, paragon of the chapter layered on top of them, and it's like, you know what? Like, I'm 120 or 140 points and 2 CP deep into this guy, maybe 3 if I put a relic on him. Do you really need it? And that's what you get from just playing the army, playing the reps. Yeah. Is like how killy does this guy need to be? And that 1 or 2 CP could make the difference someplace else later in the game. So,
oh yeah, definitely, and that's sort of where I'm having to find those inefficiencies in my playstyle as well. Because I don't trust myself with a guy that I put all that CP and resource and relics and warlord traits into, and it's like, and then I go him out, he does his thing, and then he dies, and I'm like, oh well. They weren't my toy.
I will discuss that later in the show. That happened to me. So, all right, shall we move on?
Yep, we can. So we're gonna move the monthly challenge up a slot this month because we're going to kind of talk about the lore a little bit in our main segment. Because our challenge for this month was to read a Dark Angels book, which before the show, Heath and I were talking about having motivation. I was earlier this week. I was like, you know what? I don't like this book. I'm not going to finish it. I'm just going to let Heath win this month. And then I got my second COVID shot, and I was kind of down for the count for a few days. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to plow through it. And I'm not a quitter. The Lion would not accept quitting. The Emperor does not accept quitting. So I'm going to continue to read this book. And I'm glad I did because it actually picked up in the end. So I got my book read.
That's good.
Did you get your book read, Heath?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes, I did.
So I read the Purging of Kadillus. Oh, let's see if I can get no glare there, right? And I didn't realize, like, there's very obviously an orc.
Kadillus? Yeah, well.
There's very obviously an orc on the front of this, but I didn't notice that when I bought it. I just saw the Dark Angels guy, and it was like, okay. And then I opened the book, and the main bad guy's Gazgul, and I'm like, oh, this book's got orcs in it. These are the best to read, because I just love reading the fake Cockney accents. I think that's one of the best things you can do in 40K. I know it really annoys some people, but it's like, no, this is my favorite part of the hobby, is listening to orcs talk to each other. So I was really hyped about that. It's Gav Thorpe's book, where in his timeline, because we were talking about that last month, it's what comes first, and you can tell that this is a fairly early story in a way in the timeline. It's post heresy, but it's early because Baal is the main overall commander, or Belial, or whatever. The guy that ends up being Belial, yeah. He's only the third company commander. He's not first company commander yet. So so that tells you sort of where he is. He hasn't quite earned that status yet. And he ended up being a key character for me for actually liking the book, because when I'm reading it at first, it was really bolter worship. I felt at first, like it was so much the combat, the way he described combat. And I'm trying to not be mean, because I'm not a professional writer. Although I've tried to submit a few things for Black Library in the past for like their contests and things. And I've never been in the military, but I've read a lot of science fiction military books written by ex-military people, and you can really tell the difference when you're reading a war book if the person who's writing the book actually served in the military or not. Like if you read Starship Troopers, or you read a lot of David Drake and his Hammer Slammers books, those guys were... Was Highlander in the military? I don't remember. I think he was.
I don't remember either. Heinlein is one of my favorite authors, and I feel bad about not knowing that. So I'm just gonna go to the old Google machine here.
But I know for a fact that David Drake was a Vietnam.
Yeah, he was.
David Drake was a Vietnam tank commander, which is why his books are all about sci-fi tanks. And just like reading Heinleiner, like you could tell that he was in the military. Like that's the point I'm trying to make. Is that like even though I wasn't sure, I was like with some confidence say yes he was, because you could tell from the way they wrote the book. And it's just there's the detail of terrain, like the way military authors describe battlefields is different. There's a lot more. I felt like there's a lot more detail, and like in this book, there's a lot of like they're up on a ridge. The orcs attack up the ridge. And I'm like, okay, well, what does the ridge look like? any, an actual military person would have given me that. Like, oh, there's, these kinds of rocks, this, there'd be a lot more description of things in a tactical sense, and I just didn't feel that. And there was just a lot of like, this orc's head gets exploded, this guy's chest gets ripped out. It was that kind of stuff, and I'm like, okay, I get it. And so, like, I guess that's why I didn't want to finish it at first, because I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, this is just sort of bolter worship. It's not really a military history book. But then what caught my attention, what I really liked, is when they get into some of the interplay and inner politics of the chapter in the book, or in the story, where, like, there's a conversation between a chaplain and a dark angel, where this dark angel's like, I want to stay here and fight because my homeworld is nearby, and if this place falls, then my homeworld falls, and I don't want that. And then the chaplain's like, well, that's good, that will serve you. And then, like, in the back of his mind, though, the chaplain's like, this guy seems to like his homeworld more than the chapter. This is a problem. We will have to do penance when we get back.
Yeah.
And then, like, the overall, the company commander, he's having all of these sort of like second guessing, because he makes an estimation early in the book and turns out to be wrong, and so he's being kind of watchdogged by a librarian that has the ear of Ezreal, and so he's like second guessing himself in some ways. He's like, man, I'm gonna get demoted back into just a regular Deathwing Knight kind of guy. Like, I'm gonna stop being a company commander because I messed up. And so hearing that conversation in his head, the sort of like the self-reflection, that really helped, because I just
that is good. Yeah, you want to hear that. You want to hear the characters be humanized, as much as you can humanize, a transhuman death machine.
Yeah.
But it's hard to access characters, and I guess you found out, like, make you care about them,
right,
unless they have some sort of humanity that you can latch onto.
And that's at the beginning, that was kind of the problem, but that's also because one of the main characters is a chaplain, and so, like, chaplains, I mean, they don't really have that much humanity.
Yeah, they have no emotion. they're completely pure in the eyes of the Emperor.
And they're Dark Angels ones, so they're interrogators, so they're like professional torturers. So, like, their sense of humanity is like completely gone.
There's not there. They give absolutely zero Fs.
Now, the one main character in here is the Scout Veteran Sergeant Naaman.
Oh, wow.
So this is where you find out who he is and why he's important. And I think I have one of those models, like, hidden somewhere in my collection from, like, back in the day.
I think I do as well. Yeah, he was a named character in the 3rd edition codexes.
Yeah.
And I don't think he made it into the 4th edition one. Maybe I could be wrong. It's been a minute. But yeah, he's just like, I think the Ultramarines, like, the Ultramarines lore grabbed him and put him in there.
Oh yeah, as Telamon or Teleon.
Vet Sergeant Telamon, yeah.
So if you wanted Sergeant to know, like, if you have that many and you're like, well, why is this guy important? Like, this is the story that explains it. And also some of the naming conventions, like, when a sergeant or a Dark Angel dies, they just recycle the name, and that's part of the honor cycle and doing honor and serving the chapters. Like, you get given a name, and they're like, yeah, like, the last 3 guys that had this name, this is what they did. We expect the same, if not better, from you. And so that was kind of neat too to get that.
Oh, okay.
And then there's some interaction with, like, the guardsmen and stuff that they're fighting with, so you get to see that sort of, like, that bridge you were talking about. Like, how can you humanize, these transhuman guys? Because, like, one of the Space Marines just starts going in. He's like, why would we give... He's like, the one round of my bolter ammunition takes more time to make than your entire lasgun. Why would we give it to a coward like you? And you're just like... He's like, you get your lasgun because you're bad. I get my bolter because I'm good. Deal with it. I was like, oh, get him.
Though there is an interesting perspective to look at there. From if you look at the logistics of warfare in the 41st millennium, is like, the amount of resources it would take to actually bring a chapter of Space Marines to battle. Like, every single one of their rounds of ammunition is basically a rocket propelled grenade, right? Which is the equivalent would be hundreds of dollars, and. So that's why you don't see Space Marines just going to do everything, because it's expensive. You don't have the resources for it. It's tough to consider or imagine the the Imperium of Man as a resource constrained machine,
Right.
but it is.
It is, yeah.
If you want to, and if that's your thing about like what like large scale warfare for the 41st Millennium look like, but not just like, oh hey, here's Titans and stuff on the battlefield, but like what you would actually consider as considering warfare in a larger scale. Amateurs discuss tactics, professionals discuss logistics.
Yeah.
Right. So go read Forge World books, like some of the older Forge World, big ones from back when Alan Bly was running the show. They read like military history textbooks, and like for the one that comes to mind is the Siege of Vrax. The Siege of Vrax is an excellent set of compendiums. And they talk about like, okay, we give ourselves 10 years. We have 10 years to put down this rebellion. After that, we don't have the resources to spend on this conflict anymore. So they budgeted 10 years of attention from the Imperial Guard and X amount of attention from the Adeptus Astartes. So.
Yeah, and you get some of that because there's like they start running out of resources at one point, so they start detailing like how they had to take stuff out of the tanks and pass it out to everybody else, and so you get some of that sort of the desperateness in it. That was also really nice. But I guess overall, like I went from at first being kind of disappointed and like I don't really like this to at the end I was like, all right, it was all right. It was a Dark Angels book. There are a couple good one-liners. There are a couple things where you're like, yes, this makes me happy because I also approve of this Dark Angels message and philosophy and whatnot. So there are a couple of nice little things in there. But that's like with any 40K book, you don't read them because like they're all like these fantastic. They're not Lord of the Rings. But when you read them, like there's a couple lines in every book that you're just like, yes, this is what it means to be Dark Angels, and that's why I read this book was because I wanted to read this one sentence because that's the thing that made me feel it.
Yeah, you want that good one-liner. Yeah. So the question I have for you about this: how deeply or does it feature the Fallen?
None at all. No.
None. Interesting. Interesting.
There are some references to them. I guess now that I actually think of it, there are some references. Because the one guy's like, where they're talking about the homeworld, and the guy's like, well, if you start down. If you let this little seed of doubt in, it starts you down the path. And then there's one point where somebody kind of says, oh, and then kind of gives the company commander the eyes, and he's just like, yes, exactly. We don't want to go down the path of the Fallen, because it's the librarian and the company commander talking, so they're in the inner circle, and so they just kind of, because there's other people around, so they just can't say it, so they just kind of look at each other like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
they do that thing.
They share the eyes.
And
yeah.
That's about all there is about the Fallen that they talk about.
It's good. So one of the things that I actually find a little disagreeable about a lot of the Dark Angels fiction is how heavily it all features the Fallen. And I know that's like it's like the core kind of mystery and the core struggle of the chapter, but I don't like it when it all comes back to that. It's like, oh, and there's a Fallen behind them the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, God, can we like, that's good. Like sure, we need to talk about that, but can we do something that doesn't always come back to that? I want to see them featured like as the chapter, doing what the chapter does, instead of just being this one-dimensional obsessive hunt for the Fallen. Right. And I understand that, by saying those words, I've spoken heresy, and the chaplains are on their way to re-educate me. But
and I guess
that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it.
Where the core to this book is that the orcs have invaded a world that is the staging world for them to go to a different world in the system to recruit from, like a death world where everybody's like just they're jungle cavemen, and so there's no place to there's no imperial. It's not an imperial world where they can go in and refuel their boats. So this is the closest imperial world where they can go and restock their boats and then go to this other world to recruit from. And so the fact that the orcs have attacked this resupply outpost, it's threatening an important recruitment world, and that's why the Dark Angels are there.
Yeah,
and that's kind of going back to logistics and the bigger picture. Why does this battle matter? Well, we can't recruit these soldiers if this world falls, and that's
Yeah.
why it's important.
It denies us access to this area of space, which is, once again, the Imperium of Man is basically a extractive tributary empire, which is all about pulling resources out of various other places of space and pulling them either into the core of the Imperium or, just to fund and continue to fuel their wars. So denying them the ability to gather resources that's like the only, like, say the name of the emperor with reverence in your mouth and render unto the Imperium that which is the Imperium's. Other than that, you do what you want to do, man.
Yep. That's where yep, that's basically it. So you were reading Luther, right?
Yeah, I read Luther. I didn't get a hard copy because I don't do that these days, but there you go.
Okay.
So, interesting book. It's got the Horus Heresy badge on it, but it starts in the heresy clearly because it starts with Luther. And it goes on until the modern 41st millennium.
Oh.
So this book is interesting because it's told from the perspective of Luther.
Okay.
Luther it alternates between a third person kind of limited perspective, and a first person perspective, that perspective being Luther's. I really enjoyed this book. I'll just start with that. There wasn't a lot of there's not a lot of combat. There's not a lot of, as I said, just blat 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 bolters.
Yeah.
This really tells the story of what life was like on old Caliban. And it's not really like the discovery of the lion. They do have that, and how the lion integrated into the order on Caliban, even though it does talk about that a little bit too. So this book starts with the kind of the old order, being organized around Luther, and as the heresy is drawing to a close and the confrontation between Luther and the lion that devastates the planet, and Luther getting captured and getting locked up in the rock, and basically the story is told from the perspective of Luther telling stories in the form of parables to chapter masters of the Dark Angels over the course of the millennia.
That's really cool.
It is. So it's kind of like the thing that came to my mind about it was, have you ever read or heard of Aesop's Fables?
Yeah.
This is a book of Aesop's Fables, told from the perspective of Luther, giving a parable with a meaning behind it to the chapter masters of the Dark Angels, who are the only ones that know he exists.
Yeah.
They come down into his cell in the rock, tell the Watchers in the Dark to spin down the stasis fields and be like, I will make you repent. Tell me what the Fallen are doing. He's like, what do you mean the Fallen? He's like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. He's like 5,000 years have passed, and I'm in this, and tell us what. And then he tells this. He's barely sane,
right? But
he tells a story of his life growing up as a child in the Order on Caliban to this chapter master, and it has some relevant meaning to the thing that they're asking him for, and almost inevitably, because it's 40K and Grimdark. He's telling it, and the master who's interrogating him says, "So you mean to tell me that this and this, and what we need is to, I'm to redouble my efforts to capture the Falling?" And he's like, "No, that's not what I said at all. You completely missed the point of my story.
Yeah,
that's not And then he goes back into stasis, and then there are 1,000 years pass. And so you get 3 or 4, I think 4. It's been a few weeks since I read the book. These parables that are told. He's trying to tell them, illustrate a point about what life is like and what it means to be a knight of the Order based on his experiences growing up as a knight in the Order on Caliban, and how the night houses interacted with each other, how they interacted with the great beasts of the forest, what the great beasts of the forest meant to them, and how he was blooded, how he went out to do his oh god, I can't remember what they call it, but when he went out to do his penance, right, to go kill a great beast and become a fully blooded knight of the Order, and it's a really interesting book. I don't want to and it kind of intersperses that, which is what I thought were the most interesting parts with some of the scenes from, how he started to become corrupted based off his interaction with Callus Typhon and Erebus in the Heresy, and how Luther became interested in demonology.
Okay.
And so you get a what's it called what's that literary device when someone shows up that you didn't expect them to, like Bill Murray in Zombieland.
A cameo?
A cameo. You get a cameo. you get a cameo from Corswain. So Corswain, the first captain of the Dark Angels, shows up, and while Luther has led his fleet out to basically try and put down a uprising on a planet a couple, like maybe a subsector away, well, he's been commanded very specifically by the Lion to stay on Caliban and oversee the training of the recruits. And so there's a call for aid from the Imperium, and he goes to this place and he does this thing. And while they're there, Typhus shows up in the Terminus Est with his fleet and asks him basically for his support in the uprising against the Emperor. And let's say it's interesting.
Yeah.
And while they're kind of negotiating, because he's not sure what he wants to do, so Luther met with Erebus and Typhon at the time, back in the early stages, well before the beginning of the heresy, when they had been corrupted. And Erebus was spreading the heresy throughout the legions, and they approached him, and after he had been publicly rebuked by the Lion, and said, "Hey, here's this, here's a book. Maybe you should read it. Give us a call. Tell us what you think." And as he's trying to kind of
That's not dangerous
politically pick his way, as he's trying to pick his way through the politics of, well, if I support them, then I'm going against Myos and against the Legion. But if I don't support them, they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
So I can figure out a way out of this because he is Luther. I mean, Luther is, he was overshadowed by the Lion, but who wasn't overshadowed by the Lion?
Right.
He was the best and brightest of his generation. And then as it's going down, the fleet of Corswain's fleet shows up, and they see them with 12 hours out, their warp sign. And so he has to figure out a way to interact with Corswain and give him his resupply while not betraying Typhon and Erebus, or Typhon. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then so I would highly recommend this book. It's
Did Gav?
I don't want to
write that
go over
one?
it more than that because say again.
Did Gav Thorpe write that one too?
It is also a Gav Thorpe book.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
so
more
it's
what
a
I was
real
looking
it's a
for.
real thinker.
Yeah. So okay.
It's a real thinker. It's a real thinker.
Good.
You need to.
That's my kind of book.
Yeah. I can imagine you could go through these little parables and kind of really pick out what he's trying to say and what the message that he's trying to convey to the Dark Ages. And you see another kind of subtext of this is you see over the course of 10,000 years, as the chapter goes through their initial reaction to the fall and the splitting of the chapter, and then 1,000 years, 2,000 years later, they're super zealous about it, and they haven't really kind of resigned themselves to that kind of long deception, the long game, and it kind of moves through time and how the chapter changes and the attitude of the chapter masters change towards the fallen over that span of time. And it ends basically in the 8th edition Dark Angels Codex.
Right.
Where Luther is, where the rock is assaulted, and maybe they forget to shut the door on the way out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, highly recommend. Good book, real good book.
Well,
definitely not a traditional 40K,
Well,
just bolt or blast novel. So,
well, and what I like about this too is that it shows that the author can write both kinds of books, because the one I have is more of a bolter blast one, but you apparently have the deep lore, the deep magic, and as Chronicles of Narnia would talk about. And what's fun is that this is like one of my favorite. Like when I get when I got that 8th edition codex and they advanced the storyline, the first thing I did was flip through the book to find out what happened with Luther. And then the 9th ed book came out. The first thing I did was flip through the book to find out what happened with Luther, because that's like it's always that little tiny box, like the final secret. Well, it's not, the final secret is the line, but like there's always a little box that's about him still being alive and how the chapter masters go. And they talk about his mad ravings and how they have to go down there and try and figure out what his mad ravings are. But from what it sounds like this book, it's not necessarily mad ravings. It's just the Dark Angels apparently sound so blinded by their own sense of purpose that they're unwilling to listen to him and actually realize what he's trying to tell them, because they're looking for their own. They have an answer. They're just looking for validation of it.
They're looking for justification. Yeah, they know the answer, right? And if he's telling them something that is potentially true, or maybe it's not. Once again, we don't know. Like, the whole idea of fiction in the Warhammer universe is the unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
So you're not sure. Maybe he's saying these things, maybe he isn't. It's interesting to consider. It made me think a lot.
That's good.
So.
That sounds cool. Like I want to go. I have Amazon points right now, and I'm going to go buy this book like as soon as we're done podcasting and get it shipped. It's a good book. You'd like it. So all right, highly recommend it. You should pick it up. It'll make your brain meats go whir. That is a different kind of book. So if you want more of the Bolter Blast, read the Purging. If you want your brain messed with, read Luther, apparently. And you know what? The best answer is just buy both, read both. There you go. That's sort of the main idea today. Get into some of the new lore, or I guess my book's a little bit older. It's from the series they did that was the Space Marine Battles novels series.
Space Marine Battles,
It's just like a lot of little one-offs, just to add a little bit. But you have like one of the new. That's the new cheese.
That one, it came out a couple days after we recorded our last show. Yeah. So, and I bought it during our show. I was like, oh, hey, I didn't know about this. Click. Let's do it.
So for the monthly challenge this month, going into June, what do we want to do, Heath? What's the challenge?
So I'm gonna tell you, I'm sitting here looking over at my paint table. It's been all right. Probably over a year since I really painted anything. I'm a very event, like milestone driven painter. Our challenges, starting the show has caused me to build a bunch of new stuff, but COVID and their lockdown just crushed all my motivation. And getting out of the military, start a new job, everything is just so. But now that we're starting to get back into things, I'm fully vaccinated now, so is all my family. And we just, they just kind of said that we don't need to do masks anymore. Depending on how you like, so the state of Hawaii where I live, the governor is going to keep the mask mandate in place for a little while longer, because that's what he wants to do. Hey, and that's fair. Like Texas, they're just it's all to the wind. But whatever's fine. Like I said, if you're, whatever your comfort level is. But I was able to have a friend of mine over and play a real IRL game of 40K for the first time last week, which I was super excited about. But so I'm sitting here looking, and if I need to start playing real games, then I need to start painting some stuff again. So my airbrushing and my paint skills have atrophied a bit. I'm willing to bet. Right before COVID, I went to LVO and I took some paint classes from. Like I got to do one of the CK Studios. I got to take a small CK Studios class with Caleb and Kat, which was really good. And I took another one with Aaron Lovejoy. I learned a lot of stuff, and I have forgotten all of it so since COVID happened. So what I thought we should do was maybe. If you have any Dark Angels terrain, some Dark Angels themed terrain, we should paint some terrain to start to get back into thing. What do you think?
I think that works, and I'm gonna call you out on one of the things here because I have a funny story. I think the listeners will appreciate. So you mentioned having a Fortress of Redemption. Okay. You want to finish up? But in the
I bought a Fortress Redemption 15 years ago that is currently like paint sprayed with green automotive paint, which I think I can use to. Oh yeah, it's terrible. What I can use to try and maybe break some of the rust off my airbrush skills before I start painting minis again.
All right. So my story on this is I used to be one of those kinds of people that would go to the dealership to get their car worked on, and the closest Honda dealer that I could get to was in Michigan City, which is like an hour away from me, that actually had good reviews. And it just so happened within walking distance of this Honda dealership was a game store. And so I went in there a couple times, doing this until the Honda place there didn't put one of the pieces on back on my car properly, and it started to come off and like scrape on the bottom of the road and was crazy. And I'm like, all right, I'm never going back. And I started staying in town and not being silly. But in having gone to this game store, I made a contact with the owner, and one day the owner was like, hey, he posted in like their Facebook group, hey, I just pulled this out of my barn, and it was like an old display board that was a Fortress of Redemption, fully painted. And he's like, yeah, I think I'm just going to throw this away because it's, it's on a 4x4, all this. He's like, I don't want it. If anybody wants it,
don't do
I'll
that.
just give it to you for free. So we drove out there in my Honda to go get it. It's a Civic, and the stupid thing did not fit in my car. We tried everything to get it to fit in my car, and it wouldn't work. So we went to like the Lowe's down the street, bought a moving blanket and ratchet straps, and we strapped that thing to the top of my car and drove that thing over an hour back to Plymouth. With
Clearly the right answer.
Attached to the top
Clearly
of my
the
car.
right answer. Yeah. No, when I something similar. I built I back in 5th edition when we were doing. I think when we were doing 4x8 tables, I built a table at my house at the time. And I had 2 4x4 sheets of plywood that I hinged together and like put on my coffee table. At the time, I drove a G35 coupe, like this little tiny ass race car with 2 doors. And I fit 2 4x4 sheets of plywood into that car with me in it.
Oh, gosh.
It was hilarious. It was hilarious.
My mouse has died for some reason because I was getting ready because you mentioned the train. I know exactly what train I want to go get, and I was going to ping it to you just so you could see it. But I'm going to go to Cyborg Miniatures. It's a Polish company. They do a lot of alt stuff. Like they have a cool alt semi on bike on Corvus. And what I would like to do, or that's what I'm going to end up doing, is a bunch of their like little train pieces and like basing materials for I think they're called like Lion Warriors, but they're hooded Space Marines basically. So it's like, yeah, we know what these are.
It's SF Lion Warriors. All right, cool. I think so. This is Cybor Miniatures. Yeah. SCIBOR Miniatures.com.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, those guys.
Oh wow, these are pretty.
Yeah.
Oh wow, look at that. This is an unscripted response, ladies and gentlemen. I have literally never seen this before.
Oh, well, that's why I wanted to bring it up.
SF Lion Knight motorcycle. I'm excited. Oh, wow. Oh, that's bad. That's awesome.
Yeah, so, like...
Oh, he's even got the little halberd? Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so I gotta, like, buy... The challenge, though, is that since you've said that you're doing a Fortress of Redemption, I need to buy, like, an equivalent amount of that stuff to paint in a month and get it here, because otherwise I would feel really bad. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna paint like a couple heads, I'm done. It's like he'd had to paint this giant fort, and I like, I did a couple heads and I'm done. No, so I'm gonna have to go all out on it a little bit and get a bunch of that stuff, because I bought some of their dwarf stuff for my dwarf army for Fantasy Sigmar, and it's gorgeous, and it makes my little display cabinet I put it in really cool. And so I've always wanted to get some Dark Angels ones. And now I have an excuse to spend that money and paint that stuff. So that is an excellent challenge idea.
Okay.
So,
man, these bikes look nice. Yeah. They are not cheap.
No, it's not cheap.
One unpainted resin, one of these bikes is 27 euros. Holy crap!
However, they do like monthly
they're pretty, though.
Sales, and they'll take about 20 to 33% off. So if there's something you like, just and you don't want to, you're like, I don't know if I want to pay that. Just wait for it to go on sale, because they're pretty good at doing sales all the time, and they have some pretty cool, like if you like fantasy, their big thing is dwarves, so their like fantasy dwarf line with like bear cavalry and stuff is like super cool. And then they have like an alternative Morty that's really cool. So like they got some neat stuff. I highly recommend them for things.
I could see like this bike being like your character, like your Ravenwing character or something, like your chaplain, something along those lines. That's a hot looking model, man. I'm excited about that. That is a hot looking model. All right. Anyway, I'm done gushing. Proceed. Sorry.
That's all good. I still don't have a mouse, so I don't know what I'm gonna end up doing here, but because my mouse is being dumb. Oh, is that what I need? I don't know. All right, so we're moving on to community interaction. So on YouTube, from last month's podcast, we have the wonderful Scott Straub, and he, because I think this is in response to us talking about what are we going to do with all these Drukhari, and he said, well, how about using whirlwinds and suppression fire strat to hamper some of the Drukhari assault units? That was his question to us, and we answered a little bit in the comments. But if you didn't look at the comments, if I remember correctly, our problem with this is that requires the assault units to be on the board for you to even shoot at them in the first place. Isn't that sort of the sum of what we had on that?
Yeah. So I took his comment to heart, and I played a game, like I said, last week IRL against a friend of mine who was playing Death Watch, and I brought a whirlwind, and I used a suppression fire strat, and to basically, so suppression fire does two things. One, it prevents them from overwatching or setting to defend. And the other thing is it makes them fight last.
Yeah.
So what I think, if you can, in the game I played, in the context of that, I'll discuss that in a second, but in the context of the Drukhari, you're going to need to get them out of the boats. That seems to be what the key for all the stuff is if you can knock them out of the boats and then suppression fire them, what I think that this may be able to do is, like if you use your bikes, your melta bikes to like kind of wheel around a corner, get a line on them, and knock 2 or 3 of them out of their boats. And then if you can suppress one of the squads that gets out, then you could use your Ravenwing units to go in, fight them, and then swift strike out.
Yeah.
So that will let you fight one of them without, basically without worrying about combat order. So one of the things and suppression fire will help give you some of the flexibility to do that with multiple units. So the thing I ran into last week is playing against my buddy Mars, who's running Death Watch. So I set up 2 charges, one of which was Samael on his bike into a unit of Death Watch Terminators, and the other one was my Smash Chaplain into just a unit of Death Watch Veterans. And so I charged them both in, and Samael, and I was like, okay, well, he's got enough CP, he's going to interrupt on one of these. Which one do I not care about more? It's like, well, I have to trust that my Smash Chaplain with Inner Circle is going to survive. So I guess I'm going to fight with Samael first. And so I did, and Samael did a lot of damage. That's good. And then he bounced out with Swift Strike, jumped behind my Fortress of Redemption to get cover, get behind terrain again to get cover. And then he interrupted, and then turns out 5 Deathwatch veterans with power weapons will kill his Smash Chaplain even through Inner Circle.
Yeah.
So that was a shame. And I was like, crap, I didn't even consider that I should have, because I've got my queens, 2 alpha units that I'm relying on to clean up all this damage. I should have used suppression fire to manipulate the fight order in my benefit, right? Because suppression fire says not eligible to be selected. So that way you can get 2 units in to fight without worrying about them interrupting. And if you can get the Dark Elder out of their boats, then I think suppression fire is going to give you the opportunity to hit them twice with combat units, whether it's Ravenwing or something else, without worrying, and really kind of deplete their assault force without worrying about them interrupting on you. So it's a good idea. I don't think that whirlwinds are gonna have they don't have the firepower anymore to like kill raiders out of line of sight. I think the old 8th edition version of the Whirlwind Hyperios, or not the Hyperios, whatever that super Forge World Whirlwind was that did 3d3 shots that did 2 damage. The Scorpios, yeah, Whirlwind Scorpius. The old Whirlwind Scorpius could have done that because it could activate twice and had 3d3 shots, but that doesn't do that anymore. So, but yeah, no, I think a little cheeky Whirlwind for that suppression fire strat, so that you can reliably charge 2 things without worrying about being interrupted on, would probably be valuable. So definitely a good observation.
Yeah.
And the whirlwind will help you sit on an objective. It'll sit on an objective. It'll hold the objective, and it hits on twos, man. And the only thing that suppressive fire strat requires in order to activate is that you hit the target. You don't have to damage it. You don't have to kill a model. You just have to hit the target.
And that's easy when you have, if you can blast it.
Yeah.
And you have all those shots.
Yep. The strength 7 -1 2 damage version of the whirlwind, which the vengeance launcher, which I think is I kind of like better, is 2 to 3 shot or 2d3 shots with blast and -1 AP, so -2 in the first turn of the game, 2 damage. It's going to do a decent job at killing Marines, and more importantly, you just tag something with it, and it will suppress their fire. So,
no, that makes sense. And then I think in response to all of that, Darth Veratu also commented in that chain, and he replied to you, Heath, and he said, "Best of luck to you, my friend." Mwahahaha. So so in this massive chain of this is all you have to do to get this to work. He's like, "Yeah, good luck," and it's like, "Yeah, we know."
Yeah, Darth Veratu. That's my boy Ian.
Okay.
He's the guy I was playing. I was playing that game against the Dark Eldar last I reported on last episode.
Yeah.
He's one of our local Dark Eldar / Chaos / whatever you need. He actually just started his painting business up.
Oh, nice.
So you check him out at Dark Wolf Miniatures or Dark Wolf Painting Studio on Instagram. Does some nice stuff. So
there we go. The shout out. So it was worth dropping that comment. So drop some comments below this video, and we will talk about you next month in the community interaction. So you got anything else for us, Heath? Any final thoughts?
No, man. I think that covers it. I'm looking forward to getting back into things now that hopefully the Rona is the blessings of Papa Nurgle may hopefully start to reside, at least in the United States. I know it's not better everywhere. It's in fact significantly worse in some places of the world. Heart goes out for those people in India.
Exactly.
Brazil, please go get your vaccine.
Just as bad, I think, in a way.
Go get your vaccines, people. Go get your vaccines, man. It's let's see. I am not in the best of health, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
So, it's like I don't ever have a problem getting Wi-Fi or cell phone signal anymore after they get the vaccine. But
there you go.
So, yeah. But anyway, we're actually we're starting to get back into some of the community stuff. We're in my local game store. Other Realms in Honolulu is going to do a Learn to Play 9th edition weekend in a couple weeks. So I'm signed up to help proctor that and instruct and teach that. So we'll be able to have 4 or 5 tables spread out, as much as you can spread out in a game store in Hawaii. So we're not very big, but so it'll be good to get out there and actually see people again and start trying to interact in real life with the hobby. So
I got my
things are looking up.
Vaccine in my right
things
arm,
are looking up.
So I can take my right pointer finger, and when I'm at the grocery store, I can slide it through the credit card thing, and it pays for stuff now.
Yeah, you see that Apple Pay, man. So,
all right. Well, thank you all for listening to this month's episode of The Path to Redemption, the Dark Angels podcast for Warhammer 40,000. Our next episode will come out in June. Please subscribe, and comment below so you can get into our not just because it helps out the video, but so we can talk about what you think and have to say in our community interaction section next month. And if you listen to us on podcasts, you can always comment. We have a Facebook page, Dankless Wargaming. You can go there and leave comments there. And you can always leave a line on the Dankless Wargaming website. There's a place to comment there that you can get us some feedback as well. We would also like to thank Purple Planet for the use of their music. They're a free music website that I use to do the intro video. And I just wanted to start shouting them out because I realized, hey, I have it in the show notes, but not everybody reads the show notes or the description, so I just want people to know where we get our music. And it's Purple Planet.
Okay.
They're excellent, wonderful people. They got a wide variety, and for doing 40K kind of stuff, they got all sorts of cool action music that I love and I use for all my videos. So definitely check them out. So until next time, I'm Bailey from Dankless Wargaming.
This is Heath with Table War Hawaii.
Stay loyal, Angels.